Hi everyone, welcome to the Wild Ginger Running YouTube channel, live broadcast and podcast. Today we are speaking to ultra running coach and author Jen Benson, who has just got another new book out. It's called The Path We Run, and it's a personal history of women's ultra running. But it's basically about the hidden history of women in long distance running, tied in with her own personal attempts to finish an 100-mile race. So I personally am really enjoying that because one day I might want to do a 100-mile race. So I think this is going to be a great chat for a lot of people. It's great to talk to you again, Jen. How are you doing?
Yeah, great to talk to you as well. Thanks, Claire. Yeah, doing really well, thanks.
Awesome, cool. Okay, so we've obviously got loads of questions about the book, which I have here and I've been reading, and obviously your 100-miler, Jen. But let's just give a quick shout out to the sponsors of the broadcast and podcast. So that's NAC Sports Nutrition. So I've been using their new chocolate and maple syrup gels to give me energy for my weekly training and strength and conditioning sessions. So if you want to try the gels or any of their other products like energy bars, waffles, energy and recovery powders, use code WILDGingerRunning for 15% off at uk.nac.com. So Jen, thank you so much for being here on half term. And thank you for writing another book. How many books have you written now?
I think we might be on about 12, but this is only the second one that's like a solo album. So
Your solo album.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, amazing. So so we interviewed you about your coaching and performance book that you wrote with your husband Sim just a couple of months ago, and now you've got yet another baby. You've birthed another book, The Path We Run. We've got tons of people watching live as well, so I'm just going to do a little shout out to a few people watching live. We've got Tadej here. Alex K says hello from South Devon. Yeah, tell us where you are, people. Andrea says good afternoon as well, and Chris is here as well. And there's a question from Chris as well that we need to ask you as a coach, Jen, so we'll come to that later in the show. But first, let's just have a little bit about the book. So what is it about in a massive nutshell? Like, how would you explain this book to people?
Yeah, I think it came about when I kind of came out of the other side of mothering little kids.
Yeah.
And I think there's this kind of big, like I've got 2 kids, my youngest now 10, and almost that whole decade is kind of very involved, very lot of support required for the little ones especially when they're little, as you know.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of got to this point when I realized that they weren't that bothered anymore whether I was there or not. You know, they've got Sim, they've got a great relationship with him, he's around a lot, and I suddenly realized it's like coming out of the other side of this big forest. And that's what it felt like. And it was like this new world of possibility. And I was like, well, and I hadn't spent a night away from my kids in all that time. So my daughter, that was like 12 years. So I suddenly realized like there are all these things I used to do. So before I had kids, I did adventure racing, I ran ultras, and went rock climbing. You know, I did all these things, and I carried on running through pregnancy and through the kids being little, but I definitely dialed it down a lot, and especially the risk side of things, and especially the ones that really tire you out, where you then don't have the energy so much. And some people balance it all, but for me, I just found being wiped out for 3 weeks after a 50-miler was a bit much. and I homeschooled for a long time as well. So
so you can't even send them away and have a nap.
Exactly, yeah.
That's incredible what you did. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because I feel the same. I've dialed my stuff back massively, and I tried to do 5 ultras last year, and I just got bronchitis because I just couldn't sleep. Like if I was training enough, then I couldn't sleep enough and I couldn't recover enough. So I totally hear where you're coming from, and I'm really inspired to know that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I think that was one of the reasons I wanted to write it, really, to kind of explore this journey into, I suddenly realized I had the time and the kind of permission from the kids to do these things again. And like I said, I'd done hard things before, but I'd never run 100 miles before. And I just thought, I've always been fascinated by Western States and hard rock and the Centurion events, and just like, they're so great to watch, aren't they? And you kind of see these dramas unfolding, and the story of these races as well is incredible. So I thought, now's the time. I'm going to try and do this 100 miles. It kind of sounds improbable running 100 miles, but then at the same time, all these people are doing it, so it's possible.
Yeah.
So it's quite a nice balance, and it's not too long, you know, you're not away for days or anything.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, and I kind of thought, having done all this hard stuff before, that it would be not easy, but certainly, you know, not that hard.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was quite humbling. So combination of the usual kind of coughs and colds and COVID and those things little kids pick up and bring home. And sort of having a body that was quite different, you know, after 2 kids, after I've had a few accidents and broken various things, and actually I found this body wasn't the same body as it had been before, and learning how to navigate that, and learning that I have to be kind to my body these days, whereas before I could just like hammer it day after day. Now I have to allow recovery. I have to, like you say, sleep is a massive thing when you've got kids, and trying to get that recovery in. So it was a big learning curve. And I had a few, I'm going to call them failures, because that's how they felt. And I think this fear of failure is something that stops a lot of, especially women and especially mums, lining up on these start lines, because we live in, you know, women much more than men often live in this place of judgment, of fear of failure, of fear of not being good enough. And I think actually I had such a fear of not finishing a race. And then when it happened and I didn't finish a race, I was like, oh, okay, like it was rubbish, but actually no one thought worse of me.
No one minds, do they? It's like, I'd use the word care, but that sounds a bit harsh, but nobody minds, because I remember, because I was there, wasn't I? It was UTS 100, which is amazing. Like that, to take on that as a 100-miler, that's like insane in itself. It's so much ascent. Like that is a real big one. Like there's 100-milers, then there's 100-milers, and you took a real big one. And I was doing UTS 50k, and I saw Sim, and I was like, oh, how's Jen getting on? And he was like, oh, she stopped after, was it only 35 miles or so? It just wasn't going well.
Yeah, it was about 20 miles. We'd been ill before.
Yeah,
and then, so I made a decision the day before to do it.
Yeah.
And then I got my foot wedged in a rock.
Oh no.
At one of the first times. I couldn't get it out, which was horrendous. There was like long line of runners waiting for me. So then I wrenched my foot out and pulled a load of muscles. And so that, combined with not being able to breathe, I just thought after about 20 miles, I thought, if I feel this bad now, there's no way I'm going to get anywhere near. So, but it is this combination of things, and these things can conspire to give you a really bad race, but they have to conspire to give you a good race as well. So it's remembering that all these things have to come together to give you a good race for you to finish. But you never know until you start, and you never know what you need to work on until you start. And I think a lot of people told me that, 100 miles is where you find out who you are. Mm-hmm. And I went and tried 100 miles and I failed. And I was like, is this who I am?
Is this who I am?
Do this. I'm a failure. I'm weak.
Oh,
and
no.
But what I realised was it's not where you find who you are. It's where you make who you are, isn't it? It's where you make who you want to be. And it's like, okay, I failed on that attempt. Didn't get to where I wanted to. But I lined up at the start line. I started, and that's a massive win. And then the next one, I got a bit further. And again, that was, DNFing is always horrendous, almost always horrendous, especially if you think, could I have gone a bit further? But actually, it's like stepping stones, isn't it? And if it takes a few DNFs, Courtney Dauwalter DNF'd her first 100-miler.
I know. I thought that as I read that, I was like, oh my goodness, more people should know about this. Because if Courtney Dauwalter can DNF her first 100-miler, we're all going to get in with a chance.
Yeah. And for her, there was no big reason. There was no catastrophic thing. She just thought, this hurts too much and I'm not cut out for this. And she sat there at mile 70 and watched all these people go through and realised that this kind of level of hurting is normal. Yeah. And that's what you have to do. And it's like, you just have to, you have to work on who you are, and you get there eventually. And I think not being afraid of failure, not worrying about judgment and about what people are going to think is massive, and especially for women and especially for mums, because you're taking time and money out of the family to do this. And that's a pretty hefty weight to carry, I think. And if you don't finish, there's all that weight on you as well. But I'd encourage people to just go and give it a go, because otherwise you don't know where you're at and you don't know what you need to do. And I've DNF'd so I went to TDS this year, which was again a massive, way beyond my comfort zone. And I didn't finish that, but I got halfway round, and for me that was a big win, because I was like, I can't get up the first hill on this one. And I got up the first hill and the next one, and got halfway round, and actually I'm so glad I did that. And in that case the DNF wasn't sad.
Because it was hard. That sounds a little bit like my Cape Wrath Ultra experience. I did 5 in total of the 8 days. But I just started to feel in so much pain, and I just was like, well, I don't want to be that person that's in that much pain, just moaning all day. I don't want to have a really painful 3 days of my life. I'm not running away from like a war zone or something like that. There's times when you do need to do that, and there's times when you just need to not. And so, and I think that's why I haven't run 100 miles either, because you know, like you said, Courtney sat down and she said, oh no, this kind of pain's normal, and she hadn't realised it before. I think that I don't want to even do that. So I think there's also no harm in not wanting to do 100 miles, if you know what I mean. But if you do want to do 100 miles, it's definitely very possible. I think both opportunities are available.
Yeah, and you can do 100 miles without massive pain.
Can you? So, okay. Can you be my coach?
I think one of the things about 100 milers is if you pick one with a decent cutoff, a nice generous cutoff, you can walk it all. You can walk the whole thing. And as long as you keep up a decent pace, you can walk it all. And it's actually, because I ended up, without too many spoilers, walking quite a lot of my 100 miler. With some great company, and towards the end we were overtaking people who were running, because just because we weren't slowing down as much, we didn't have all that impact against it, and we finished well within the cutoff. And this is considered to be it's the arc of attrition, considered to be quite a tricky 100 miler. But actually, I think because you can, as long as you average a decent, as long as you don't hang around too much at the aid stations, you can average quite a slow pace and still get in the cutoffs. And I think that's something people don't realise as well, that it's not all about, you don't have to run for 100 miles. As long as you're managing yourself and not slowing down too much and keeping up that average pace, it's perfectly doable without completely wrecking yourself. And I think that was something, with kids, you don't want to you can't just go and sit on the sofa for a week after.
Or even the day after.
Exactly. And being self-employed, and the deadlines don't stop just because you've done 100 miles. So I think part of TDS was not wanting to be in such a state that, because I was there on my own, I got the train down, and I was so aware that if I hurt myself, I was stuck. I had to get the train all the way back with my heavy rucksack and stuff. So there's a lot of self-preservation. I think that's what you're talking about as well, is that, like, that sense of I don't want to hurt myself. I don't want to break myself to the point of not being able to do all the other things.
Or I just don't want to be in that moment of pain. Like I've done like beasting myself and being in pain, and now I just want to have a nice time. But if I sort of was able to ramp it up again and was doing 50 milers I can do 50 milers in a decent state, but I just can't imagine turning around and doing that all over again and not being in pain. So that's why I'm very impressed that you've managed to do it. So the book is about you doing your 100 milers and doing your training, but also talking to all these amazing people along the way. And that's one of the things that I really like about this book. It reminded me of Richard Asquith's book Feet in the Clouds, where he attempts time and time again to do the Bob Graham round and chats to all the great runners that have done it along the way. And I just thought this was I don't know if you copied that idea from him or like had that as inspiration or anything, but it just reminded me of that, and I love that style. I thought it was great.
Thank you. Yes, I loved Richard Asquith's book, and it came out, I think I write about it in the book, but the year I did my first trail race was the year Richard Asquith's book came out. So it was brilliant timing.
I think he inspired a lot of us.
And now I was so lucky, and I think it's one of the things about the ultra running community is everyone was so up for chatting. So I talked to Courtney, I talked to Beth, I talked to Jasmin and Lucy Bartholemew, and I was like, I couldn't believe it when they said yes, I'm happy to have a chat. Like, this is ultra running royalty.
I know.
It was a real privilege, and just goes to show what an awesome community it is as well. So
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so nice. Like Courtney's so lovely, isn't she? And
Yeah.
I just wondered if you could give us a few tips that maybe you learned from each person. Like, was there like a main takeaway you took from Courtney apart from her just being like really cool? Like, what did you were you after every phone call? Were you like, oh, I'm going to do that differently or something like that? How
Yeah,
was that with
definitely.
Courtney?
Yeah, I think the main one with Courtney is the way she can turn everything to a positive.
Yeah,
So, like, I was kind of complaining at her about the mountain. Like, I was training for this 100-miler in Wales, and there's the mountains, and it rains in Wales, and you know, and she was like, "Well, you wouldn't want it not to be the full adventure, would you? You want this to be a proper adventure." So, like, and I kind of that really flipped it on its head. And I was like, "Well, it's true. I'm
yeah,
doing this because I want an adventure, and that's why I've picked a hard one in a rainy place." So,
yeah.
and in the end, it was really hot, which had its own issues.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think that ability just to flip things around and go, actually, I'm so lucky to be here. I'm so fortunate to be here, to have the support, to have the means to do this, to be healthy and uninjured, and all those positives. And she's just relentlessly positive, isn't she?
yeah, like relentless is a good word for it.
Yeah,
She doesn't ever complain about like anything or anyone or any situation,
yeah,
and in that way I really feel like she's doing a really great job for female runners, because she's not sort of banging on about feminism or anything. That's really bad to say. She's not sort of kind of moaning about how hard things are for women. She's just getting on and doing really hard things and going, look, I'm just here doing it. Like what?
yeah,
Like let's just crack on, people. Yeah. So
yeah.
I,
And
I
when you
really like
do
that
ask
about
her,
her.
like, yeah, I asked her about, do you think women will overtake men in ultra distance, or like, and she just not interested. She's like,
Yeah.
ultra running is about the individual,
Yeah.
and it gives us all the opportunity to shine in all these different areas. And it means that if you're a man who is less physiologically gifted than Killian, you still have all these opportunities to use all your strengths to play to your strengths. So yeah, I think certainly from what she said, it is more irrelevant really. It's
Yeah.
she's passionate about getting more women into ultra running, but the whole whether women are faster than men over longer distances debate kind of didn't seem to interest her. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's super interesting, because she must be in some ways really competitive, but not in that way. So yeah,
yeah.
that's super interesting. And did you get a similar vibe from the other ladies that you interviewed? Like you mentioned that you interviewed Beth and Jasmine and Lucy. Yeah, who did you interview next? Would it be Beth maybe next?
I,
Or
I
does
think
it doesn't matter,
yeah,
does it?
I think I interviewed Debbie Martin-Consani
Oh,
fairly early.
Debbie. I love
Yeah,
Debbie. Yeah.
yeah,
So
she
what?
was brilliant, but just
Yeah.
very different. Like, she
Yeah.
doesn't put a positive spin on everything.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And that was much more relatable in a way, because
Mm.
she was like, every single race she does, she really wants to quit. There's a point that she reaches where she really wants to quit.
Wow.
So
I
she's
didn't know
got
that of
these,
her.
yeah. So she's developed all these amazing strategies to not quit.
Yes. Yeah.
And so her thing is, don't shit quit. And
Right.
this is her mantra. So, if your leg falls off or something, that's not shit quitting. That's fair enough.
Yes.
But if you can carry on, you carry on, because you never know what's going to happen. And she said so many times she thought, I can't do this, I'm dropping out. And then she's gone on, had a really good second half and won the thing. And she's so glad she didn't drop out.
Yeah.
And I think doing that time and time again, she's kind of learned that it's just part of the process, is going through that point where she knows she's going to want to drop out. So that was really useful as well.
That's so good to know. I do find that more relatable than Courtney. Like I find Courtney like a statue, like a Greek statue that's just up there that's really big. But I find that from Debbie really relatable, because when you get to that point in a race, you genuinely you think you failed, don't you? Just because you feel that way about the race. So yeah, thanks for that. I am actually going to take that into my next race. And you know what, Jen? You've sold 3 books already. Listen to this. Andrea, didn't know about this book. Sounds really interesting. interesting. So I've just ordered it. Alex K.
Thank you, Andrew.
I've just added your book to my Christmas wish list. It sounds really inspiring and I hope to do a 100-miler sometimes in my life. Tina added the book to my wish list. Sounds like a great read. Cool. So yeah, there you go. 3 books sold.
Thank you.
So it's definitely worth doing, and definitely worth putting Jen's book on your Christmas list, because it is really well written and I really love it. So yeah, Beth, what did Beth say? Because Beth she was flying, wasn't she? Like during COVID or just after COVID, she got the Bob Graham women's record down. She did it at Western States. She was just flying all over the place, doing everything. What did she have to say for herself on 100 milers?
Yeah, it was a difficult time to talk to Beth. I found it difficult because she just had this injury. She got to the point where she knew she wasn't going to be able to run probably for another year. She'd had that amazing, Western States. Watching that was so inspiring, and then it had all come crashing down a bit.
Yeah.
It was. And I think
I didn't realise you'd interviewed her when she was injured. Yeah.
But it sounds like post-baby, she's now on the mend and running again.
Yeah.
Which looks like a really exciting thing, because obviously her sister Fiona's doing brilliantly.
Yeah.
So it'd be exciting to see what Beth does next, I think.
Yeah, or if they race together or something, that would be really cool, like the Brownlee brothers or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did she, because she had this sort of long-term injury at that time, did she still give some advice that you found useful for your 100 milers then?
Yeah, I think so. I think Beth's kind of top tip was that things don't happen overnight. So she said, like, from the outside, it might have seemed like she suddenly got really good and suddenly started winning all these races. But actually, in the background, she'd been working towards that for 10 years. It's a long-term project, and something, when we take up running, something we should be looking at in terms of 5-10 years to reach a peak, rather than I want to go and smash it next year.
Yeah.
And it just does take that long for all those adaptations to happen in our bodies, but also in our minds, that like gradual increasing of confidence. And sometimes we have to do something before we believe we can do it, and that's something in ultras that's massive. With your first 100 miler, you have never run 100 miles before, and a lot of people have never run more than 50 miles or 60 miles when they do their first 100 miler. So you're in this unknown for a long time. So you can't draw on like, well, I've done this before, so I'll be able to do it again. There's nothing like
yeah, there's nothing there. It's like a frontier land.
You have to do it first and then believe it later, which is kind of a strange way round.
Yeah, you have to sort of believe in yourself in a sort of abstract way. Yeah.
Yes, I think so. So yeah, I think that was Beth's main takeaway, was just to give it time and not rush things.
Yeah.
Because and obviously being a doctor, she knows how bodies work and all that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I know you've also written a lot about coaching, and you are an ultra running coach yourself. Like from 0 to doing 100 miles, how long does that process take? Like, or how long would you want someone to take to do it really gradually and safely?
I think it depends on everything from how old that person is, what their history is, so how much running they've done before. They might have been a track runner since school and they're just moving up to 100 miler, in which case they could probably, if they've been consistently running for a long time, even if it hasn't been long distances, their bodies will be accustomed to that like continuous pounding
that
of
motion.
Running. So yeah. So in that case, you can build up quite quickly if you're really used to running anyway. But if you've got someone who's new to running, especially after something, so a lot of women come to running after having babies, for example. And in that case, you might be new to running, but also you're in a body that's different from the body you had before babies, that kind of thing. And also as we get older, as we go into perimenopause, all the hormonal effects that happen there change how we respond to training, change how we are able to recover, all those things. So it's really, really individual. But I'd say in general, the longer and more consistent your build-up can be, the better. So like a good chunk of consistent training, regardless of any fads or like sessions or anything, the longer you can make that consistent block of training, the better. And so not rushing into it. And and always listening to your body as well. So with the people I coach, is a very kind of dynamic, evolving process where I get feedback on every single session and then change things to try and stop them getting injured or falling out of love with running.
Yeah, keep the love alive. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a question as well from, where's it gone? Oh, I just put it down here. We did have a question on coming to ultra running like this from road running. So Chris said, I have a question for Jen. Any tips for transitioning training, both mentally and physically, from road to trails? So he signed up to the ARC 25 in January, which is a tough coastal marathon, as you all know, having done the 100. And he's mostly been training for road races all year. So yeah, what would you say to that sort of question?
Yeah, I'd say the transition to trail is, there are kind of lots of different things. So with the ARC, the coast path is quite technical. Like it's undulating, like there's no long hills, but it's constantly up and down. So that's one big thing. So getting used to, I don't know where Chris lives, but if there are short, steep hills, like bringing some hill reps in, doing regular hills to get used to the uphill, but also the downhill, because the hammering that downhills give you quads is a big one. And 25, it's not too lengthy, but it's still, especially if you want to do it quickly, you need to get your legs used to that kind of hammering that the regular up and downs will give your legs. And also there's a lot of, especially if you're moving faster, kind of being precise with your foot placements so you don't trip over things, because that's a big thing on the coast path. Is there's little rocks and roots, and it's very varied, and there's mud, and so really varying terrain. So just getting out on as many trails as you can, as many different trails as you can, getting used to running in mud, getting used to running, so where there are roots, and you have to have really fast feet and know where your feet are going. So the more practice you can get, like there isn't loads of time left, but there's still definitely enough time to practice. So just getting lots of time on trails, really, like your body adapts really quickly, and it's almost as much about perception and being able to spot far enough ahead those little obstacles that you need to get around and get over, and that helps you be able to run sort of fluidly and quickly even when the terrain's really tricky. So I'd say the ARC's a good one because it's not too mountainous. You keep the sea on your left.
Yes.
But yeah, it is still, don't underestimate the hills or the kind of need to have fast feet and be used to doing that. So yeah, the more you can get on it, the better, really.
Yeah, or just on the verges, like on the side of the road.
Yeah.
Watch out for dog poo.
Yeah.
And Severine, who's watching live, she is friends with Chris. Hi, Severine, great to see you. She says Chris lives in the Chilterns, so that shouldn't be too hard to get out on some trails. So go for it, Chris.
And the Chilterns are super slippery, aren't they, in the winter? So
yeah,
it's really good.
Clay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, well, that was a little bit of a sideline. We went off at Beth, and now I just want to go back to Jasmin and Lucy as well, because I love talking to Jasmin Paris. She's so, like, even though she's this big mega star, she's so always just unassuming and humble and just really nice person. She just doesn't come across as a massive mega star like you would, in some other sports that you might come across. Yeah. So how was it chatting to her, and what did you take from her for your 100-mile journey?
Yeah, I think I completely agree. Like, she's so lovely, so like modest, and she and she's so hardworking. Like, I think she got up at 5 every morning training for the Bartholemew Marathon, and one night she did like a 9-hour training session starting at midnight, and then took the kids swimming.
I don't know how she does all that sleep deprivation. No. Just like I've had 6 hours sleep last night, which I don't consider a great night. And I've been up since 5:30. But I just, like, even that one night, I'm going to have to go to bed at 9:30 now.
Yeah, and I think that takes a certain kind of resilience. And I think she's had periods of feeling too fatigued to train as hard as she wants. And that's normal, I think, when you're putting yourself under that much stress. But with Jasmin, I think one of the most interesting things, and that we can all learn from, is that she grew up walking in the mountains with her parents. She learned to navigate really early on. She was used to long walks, being in the middle of nowhere, no shops or like anything nearby, and just being comfortable in those environments.
Yeah.
And being self-sufficient. And then as she was older, she would go hiking and camping with her brother, and they'd be in the middle of nowhere and, in mountainous places, and have to be relying on themselves, having to navigate all that self-management stuff that actually in that environment can save your life. It's properly important there, unlike in most ultras where it keeps you going, but it's not normally a life or death thing, is it? So I think what I've taken from Jasmin is that, girls and women tend, this is obviously a generalization, but we tend to do less of the navigating. We tend to learn to read maps less. And I talked to Kerry Wallace as well, Girls on Hills, Kerry, and she has this experience. There's so many women who don't learn to read a map and therefore think that they can't read maps. And we kind of grow up with this narrative that we're in some way inferior when it comes to map reading. And actually, that's not true. It's a bit like driving. We often get less opportunity to do it. So we're just, we don't have the chance to develop those skills. And with Jasmin, she's an amazing navigator, much better than a lot of her male peers. And we know this, like, she dropped Eugenie, I think, in the spine, didn't she? Because he was following her because of her amazing navigation skills. Yeah. And she knew that if she could drop him, then because she was a better navigator, she'd pull ahead, and that's what happened. So I think this is one about getting our girls and young women navigating and used to being out in, things like DV, and we have 10 tours down here, and just being used to being uncomfortable and being reliant on yourself and kind of being a bit tough. And that's okay. It's okay to be out in the wet and wet feet and, out in the rain and things. And that's actually can be fun.
Yeah.
And learning all these skills early on. So, yeah. And I think that's a massive part of why she's where she is, because she's so good at all those things.
Yeah.
And obviously she has all this, she has the physical stuff and the support as well. Her parents are very supportive, look after the kids, her husband's very supportive.
Yeah.
Just kind of all these things come together with Jasmin. And John Kelly's written brilliantly about it. And that's why, it was going to take someone like that, whether it was a man or a woman, to finish Barclay. But it's sadly because of societal norms, it's more often men who come along with those skills than it is women. And I think that was, a big reason why she succeeded where so many other women and men have failed. So
yeah, that's really interesting. I do think that is a generalization, but unfortunately it's true, isn't it, of a lot of people that we see. So did Jasmin inspire you to sort of take on more navigation in the 100 milers that you chose, or a bit more of the wild side? How did she inspire you along your journey?
Yeah, I think she's so with UTS 100, she just said, just look at it as a big hike.
Yeah.
And actually, for me, that was really helpful. Just like, it's just a big hike.
Yeah. When I reframed some ultras as that really helped as well. But then if you do hike too slowly, like I did on the Arc of Attrition 50, then you just get cut off. So you have to choose the right one to hike. And then Lucy Bartholemew. Now, I have never interviewed her, but I've heard so much about her, and she's just absolutely brilliant. And I love what she does. She does a lot. I've seen her do a lot around body positivity as well. So I'm just totally down for her. Tell us a sneaky insider secret about what she told you then. Not everything. We want people to buy the book.
I think with Lucy, I can't believe she's still like 26, I think.
Is she?
26, 27.
She's so young.
So but she's already been in ultra for about 10 years. So she's really part of that community, and she's incredibly charismatic. Like she instantly feels like your best mate. She's lovely to interview. But also like really passionate about getting women doing this, because she was basically told at school you can't make a living from running, and she is proving that person wrong.
Yes.
But I think one of my favorite quotes in the book comes from Lucy, and I'll paraphrase it, but it's something along the lines of, like, in 100 miler, all you've got to do is put one foot in front of the other and eat your sandwiches. And like, as a mum, how often do you get to have that kind of day?
It's kind of easy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just thought that does help, like in that kind of reframing, in that moment when you're having a pity party and I can't do this, actually going, this is such a privilege to be out here, one foot in front of the other, eat your sandwiches, and that's all you've got to do all day.
Yeah, I think
It's
a
very
lot of
simple.
mums find ultra running easier than actually like being with their children. I don't know, I'm just speaking on behalf of me and some of my friends, but we go to the mountains to escape because it's a lot easier just to look after one person than it is to look after several people. So yeah, that's fabulous, and it's just so good. I love the way that you weave everybody into the book, and like the various experts pop up as well, saying this, that, and the other, and you've also got a bit of the history of women's running and women's long distance running as well in there. And I just, every time I read stuff like that, I'm just like, why was everyone so bothered? Like in 1928 or whenever it was, when they had an 800-meter race and the men said, oh no, all the women looked very out of sorts, so we can't ever have that happen again. Why do you think that men had such a problem with women running in the olden days? Like why is it only taken till like the 1970s or 80s for fell races to let women run? It doesn't, when women have to do childbirth, why does everyone think that women are weak? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So if you can shed any light on that, that'd be great.
Yeah. No, I think it's probably very, very complicated and nuanced. I think the response to that 1928 race, so for context, I think, I don't know, about 5 women broke the 800-meter record, and a lot of them collapsed at the end, just as everyone does. You know, if you watch an
Yeah.
800-meter race, there's a lot of gurning and sweating and collapsing.
Yeah.
So it sounded like a normal process of an 800-meter race, but the global press found it completely unacceptable. And I think seeing women maybe not wearing a lot, maybe very obviously physical and sweating and powerful, you know, having powerful athletic women in the public eye at that time was maybe difficult for some people. And I think perhaps we were expected to be a bit more ladylike. You know, it's very unladylike, isn't it? And that phrase was used, that there were this group of fine young ladies getting themselves in a bit of a state, and it's not really, it's sort of framed as coming from a place of concern, but in fact I think it comes from a place of deep discomfort with, this isn't my idea of femininity.
Yeah, that women should be at home cooking meals and looking after babies, even though that in the olden days was an endurance task in itself, to do all the washing and like clean everything all the time and look after babies. I just don't know where this idea came on that women were particularly weak. It just baffles me.
I think the doctors said it was bad for our reproductive systems as
yeah,
well.
the womb would fall out. Like we weren't allowed to drive initially, were we, in case the womb fell out? And we weren't allowed to ride bikes, were we, because we made bike face, which is like a bike face. That was a thing as well. We're just meant to look pretty.
Bikes meant that we could suddenly, even if we weren't allowed to drive, bikes were a big deal for women, like massive in feminism, allowing us to get to other places without men. And I think it's that resistance to change, isn't it? Like it's resistance to taking something out of a box that we've put it in, and it's nice and comfortable, and that's where it belongs, and suddenly it's different. And but it's certainly not a reason to stop, is it?
Well, I'm just so glad that we live now, because I feel like you and I live in this golden era of women doing incredible things. You know, like all the people that you've just interviewed, Jasmin and Debbie and Beth and Lucy and Kerry with her Girls on Hills as well, and Courtney obviously as well. It's like a golden age of women doing amazing stuff. And you eventually, we don't want to spoil the book, but obviously you must have finished your 100-miler. Like, did the training go well? Like, how on earth do you train for something like that? And you obviously had to start that training 3 times. Was there something that you suddenly thought, oh, this is what I'm doing wrong, I'll do this in my training? Was there any kind of revelatory moments like that for you?
I think it was the unpredictability of the colds and coughs and things. So what I ended up doing was moving us all to Cornwall for 3 weeks before the Arc, so that we didn't catch anything. And that was the only thing that worked. It was ridiculous, especially over the winter. We got COVID that Christmas, so we just recovered from COVID when we went to Cornwall, and I just thought, if I'm going to do this, we almost needed to quarantine ourselves. So it was
Yeah.
lovely. We got a little cottage down on in Mullion on the Lizard, and the trail running couple owned the cottage, so it was really nice. And I got to chat with some people who'd done the Arc before, and do my last bit of training on the course as well. So
wow.
it was about
That's brilliant.
It's not doable for everyone.
What a great idea, though. Like, that's fantastic. Like,
Yeah.
I hadn't realised that you'd gone to such lengths. That's brilliant. But I suppose with the homeschooling, you can do that. Whereas if people were in school, they wouldn't have that option. So maybe just the woman would just go for her. You just go for your own little 3-week hermitism.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to do it now our daughter's at school. But
yeah,
it was kind of the last chance we had to be able to do that. And I just thought, if I have to finish this 100-miler, it is just so unpredictable, isn't it? When you got race week coming up, and I have this with the women I coach. Every single race week, one of the kids comes down with something, and it's like,
and they're just waiting to like snog someone with the flu. Yeah. Stop it, children. It's almost like you need to enter 300 milers, or like a week apart, or like every month, like one a month, but and then just choose one to actually do.
Yes, and then they're all monstrously expensive, aren't they?
Oh, so I know. Well, that's why I do the job that I do, because I can't pay for them. But then I end up having to go around with a camera, and I think I was a bit slow on the Arc 50, but that is one of the reasons why I was slow, because I kept filming. Everything was so beautiful. I kept filming it all. So I've always said to myself, if I go back, I am not filming it, because I need every last second of that race.
You have to do it for yourself as well, don't you?
But I kind of, for me, the filming is like it takes my mind off the other things that are going on. Like I'm not as bored by the constant kind of like anything boring or pain. But that so on that race in particular, did you have like any like major high points or any major low points on the race that you finished, the Arc of Attrition 100?
Yeah, I was amazed actually how terrible I felt at the beginning.
Oh,
I think
no.
I'd psyched myself up so much. And everyone had said, you need to go really fast at the beginning, because there's this big hill, and then there's a really narrow bit. So you've got to get really fast, and then you'll be at the front on the narrow bit.
Yeah.
So I was like, legged it up this really steep hill and didn't get anywhere near the front, obviously, because everyone else was going faster. So then I had to wait. But I think I'd then gone anaerobic really early on in a 100-miler, which is a really stupid thing to do. And then I carried on going a bit fast, and I forgot to eat. And so by 40 miles, I felt absolutely terrible.
Oh, no. Was that like where would you be at that point, like near the Minack Theatre, like where the 50 starts, like not quite there yet, like 10
not
miles
quite
off there?
I think maybe Penzance was a low point, so I had really bad hiccups. I just remember walking through Penzance in the middle of the night, hiccuping really loud. I got so ill.
That's so bizarre, isn't it? Of all the things. So
but one of the so they have angels instead of volunteers at the Arc. They have the archangels, and one of the angels was actually an angel, and she looked after me, and she gave me watermelon and pizza, and saved my race. So from then onwards I felt better. So I got to halfway at Land's End, and spotted a chap who wanted to give up, and ended up talking him into carrying on.
Amazing. So you saved his race. You like passed it forwards.
Yeah, but he also saved mine. So we did the last half together, and it was really good to have company as well. And so it's amazing the bonds you form with people out on these things as well. It's you're going through this kind of nightmare together.
A self-inflicted nightmare. It's mad what we do, isn't it? It's really bonkers. So by 80 miles I felt great, because I'd managed to eat then and things, and that was really nice. By 80 miles, it's the last checkpoint at St Ives, and then I knew, because they'd said as long as you get through St Ives within the cutoff, you can walk it home then. That was good. Did you still have to do like the dunes at is it Godevry? Godrivi, is it? Yeah.
The Dunes of Doom. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, because that's where I got timed out, because I was
Okay.
like got lost in the dunes, and I'm really glad that I didn't try, and I had really bad stomach pain, and I'm really glad that I didn't try really hard through the dunes, because I was 15 minutes off. I didn't want to be like 1 minute off. I wanted to be like a good 15 minutes off the thing, so I wouldn't have been like, oh, I should have just sprinted. So you got through there, and then you did that last bit, and then there's those horrendous steps, isn't there, that go down, and then up. Oh my goodness, how was that after like 90 odd miles?
Yeah, I'd started hallucinating a bit by then as well.
Oh
wow. There's like a big radar dome. There's like an old military base there. There's a big radar dome. I was convinced it was chasing us.
Oh my god.
And every time I looked, it was like going along.
Oh my goodness.
It wasn't.
That must have been really scary.
It was really scary. You know, when all like the hairs go up on the back of your neck. I was like, ah!
Yeah.
Big dome. So yeah, it was quite nice actually. I'd never had hallucinations before, and I was seeing all sorts of stuff because it was then going into the second night. I think we finished about 8 p.m. on the second night. So, just that little bit of darkness kicked off all those cool hallucinations.
Oh wow, yeah. So we're just like on the edge of like insanity. Yeah. Oh man.
But yeah, those steps, they are horrible. And I did think like if this was daytime under normal circumstances, there are all these, it's like a scene from Everest, you know, where like people are taking like 2 steps and having to stop. It was like that.
Did you have poles at that point, or like did anyone were you allowed? Yeah,
I didn't have poles at all for the arc, but I was just terrified that someone from the top was going to fall down and then we're going to like domino all the way down.
Yeah, because the steps are really high, aren't they? It's not like you could just be like, oh, 1, 2. There's a proper push off that you've got to do with your thighs and your other leg. So there's massive kudos to you. And then the end is uphill, isn't it, as well? Like you go through a Porth something and and then up this massive hill to finish. Oh my goodness.
At least by then you can hear the finish, so you know it's near done. So
yeah, you're like one last hill. And so how did it feel coming across the finish line, like your first 100 miler after a couple of DNFs of 100 miling? How did you feel?
I was expecting it to be really emotional. I was expecting it to be this, but actually I just felt like almost relief in a way.
Oh, I don't have to do that again for a while.
And it was almost like that whole journey was the awesome bit. And crossing the finish line was almost the end of that journey. So it was really cool. And like once I'd recovered, those kind of endorphins and things kicked in. I was really pleased. But crossing the line was quite odd, and I kind of just felt really sick.
You were probably just really tired as well. Like you just want to go to sleep.
But yeah, no, it was it was good to get it done. It was quite surreal seeing that finish line and thinking I'm actually going to do it after all this time. So
And during the race, were there any like little voices from anybody that you'd interviewed? Did they pop up and sort of like spur you on? Were there any little motivational moments that you had from all your interviews for the book, or did that come you were thinking of writing the book during the whole process and sort of writing it as you went? Did anyone pop up with like little bits of inspiration?
Definitely. One person who I interviewed, Kirsty Reid from Peterborough, she was running the race as well.
Oh, cool. Yes.
When I was feeling really, really rough, she overtook me and she said, "This will pass."
Oh,
you know, it will pass. And
so
that
profound.
was, I just hung on to that. Yeah. I was just like, she's so experienced. She's done all the races.
Yeah.
And just for her to say, like, you feel rough now, but it will get better. That was really powerful.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Kirsty.
Yeah. And I ran with Ali Bailey for a bit, and that was really nice because obviously, again, she's done so many hundreds. So I ran with her for a bit, and that was nice. And I think Eleanor Robinson, who used to be Eleanor Adams, so she was multiple world record holder. She won the first ever Badwater.
Wow.
outright. And she's still about, and she's just brilliant, loves running, still running in her 80s.
Wow.
And I'd had a chat with her, and she said to me, she sent me an email saying it will hurt and you will want to stop. But if you don't stop and you get to the finish, it will be magic. And I just thought, just that honesty of it's going to really hurt and you're going to really want to stop. And in some ways, you just need to have someone say that to you, don't you?
Yeah.
And
then it will stop hurting afterwards.
Yeah. And that's kind of the point, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, I feel newly inspired now, Jen, to run 100 miles one day. Now that you've told me that
Yeah,
it definitely will hurt whatever I do, I'm like, well, I just don't know if I don't really want that hurt. I don't really want to have the pain. So I think I might be able to live without doing a 100 miler. But I think it's fantastic. If anybody wants to do a 100 miler, then this book will just help them get there. I think, and it's not just for the women, is it? It's for men as well. I think
yeah,
the sacrifices of everyone and the amazing stories of ultra running performance in here are inspiring to anyone. I mean, we've had books for years where it's just been men in there that we've supposed to be inspired by. So why shouldn't it be in reverse?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I think with the pain thing, I think even if like this is something we can keep doing, into our 50s, 60s, there's no rush. And I
Yeah,
think when you're still in the trenches with young kids,
yeah,
pain and endurance is very every day, isn't it? It's like childbirth, it's this kind of intense endurance is every day. And I think sometimes you just need a bit of time and a gap from that. So never say never.
yeah. I think you're right. Like, I will never say never, because it is a nice thing to say that you've done, isn't it? A
Yeah,
100 miler,
it is.
like,
Yeah,
and it is a nice journey to go on. But I think at the moment the idea of like running through the night when all nights are precious is just like
yeah,
really,
yeah.
yeah, really not appealing. And Chris has been really enjoying this. He says, "Wow, it sounds absolutely amazing." The arc of arthrition, and
You'll love it.
yeah. And today says it's only pain is a phrase used by the Irish Special Forces. Yeah, yeah. The military do say that, don't they? They're like, oh, it's only pain.
Only pain.
But it is there for a reason, people, so we shouldn't ignore
Yeah.
any injuries. But we have got some quick fire questions for you, Jen, before we ask you, before like a final shout out to the sponsors and ask you how we can find out more about your books. So are you up for some quick fire questions?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, what do you prefer, a morning run or an evening run?
I prefer a morning run. Often it ends up an evening run because everything's happened all day. But if I can,
Yeah.
I much prefer a morning run. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And after a challenge, I know in the book you said you've given up drinking, but what would you prefer, wine or beer after a challenge?
Well, as someone who now doesn't drink, I'm really happy at the amount of really good alcohol-free beers.
Oh my God,
So
it's great, isn't
I
it?
love a wild beer.
Yes, awesome. I love non-alcoholic beers. They're just a
Yeah,
game changer, aren't they? I'm so glad they've just been invented for when
yeah,
we want to give up drinking for kids.
yeah.
Um, so, would you rather do a wild camp or a bunkhouse?
Probably a wild camp, I think. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
out
Get all
under
the
the
kit,
stars.
hike somewhere out in the stars.
Yeah.
So poles, would you call them poles or would you call them, like foul runners do, cheating sticks?
I call them poles because you need big arms. They're not cheating if you've got weedy arms.
Yeah, exactly. Map and compass or GPS watch?
Um, I always use. Well, I can't see my watch anymore because it's like I've got to that point of long-sightedness where
Your
my arms
arm's too
aren't long
short.
enough. Yeah. So, so I use my phone and the OS Maps app, which I love. So it's kind of somewhere in between, I think.
Yeah, bit of both. Yes, I
Yeah.
love that OS Maps app. It's like a
Yeah.
sat nav
So
for the hills, and it's brilliant.
yeah.
Okay, this is a funny one. Taylor Swift or Slipknot?
Oh, what?
Slipknot.
Can I say neither?
Yes, you can say neither. What would you,
Yeah.
if you
Thank you.
did use headphones on your run, what would you be listening to?
Um, I love an audiobook or a podcast.
Oh,
I love all the like sciencey podcasts. And yeah, I love getting into a good book because it's like you can't wait to get out for a run so you can listen to your book.
yeah.
I
Oh
really
my
like that.
goodness. That's such a motivational point. Yes, I love that.
Yes.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs every time.
You can run with a dog.
Yeah.
Glass half full or glass half empty?
Ooh. We'll go with Courtney, glass half full.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, yeah, so those are the quick fire questions. And we'll find out a bit more about where to find your books, but we'll just need to do a little shout out to NAC Sports Nutrition. So if you decide to do a 100-miler because you've been inspired by Jen's amazing book, The Path We Run, or any of the tips Jen's been talking about here, and doing another ultra of any distance, 100 miles is not, not in everyone's game plan. But if you fancy doing an ultra, you'll definitely need some gels, bars, waffles, and drink powders for your next running challenge from NAC Sports Nutrition. So use code WildGingerRunning for 15% off at uk.nac.com. So you've written lots of books with Sim, your husband, but are they all available on your website, or where can people find out more or follow you?
On our website is jenandsimbenson.co.uk, and that's got all the books and links to where you can buy them. They're all on all the usual places. So and we're at Jen and Sim on Instagram as well.
Awesome. Well, there's lots of really inspiring books. I'm just going to read out a few. There's like The Adventurer's Guide to Britain, Wild Running, Amazing Family Adventures, Smart Running, which we interviewed you guys about a couple of months ago, and of course your latest book, The Path We Run, which I highly recommend. It's very inspirational. It's like the sequel to Feet in the Clouds by Richard Askwith. The female version of that. Yes. So thank you so much, Jen. I'm just going to read out a couple of nice comments. Andrea said, really enjoyable interview. Thanks, Jen. And Alex K said, really enjoyed that. Thank you. And a smiley face. So you've inspired a good few people there on the live chat, and you'll inspire many more as I turn this into a podcast. So we really appreciate your time today, Jen. It's just been fab talking to you again. And I just hope that this episode inspires loads of trail and ultra runners to run 100 miles or just read the book, The Path That We Run by Jen Benson.
Thank you, Claire.
No problems. Bye, everyone, and have a great week.